So you've got some extra cash and you're thinking about investing. But if you're new to this, you can feel like you're trying to read a foreign language. No worries, I got you. This is the ultimate beginner's guide to invest in this year. I'll break it down into 5 easy sections. Part 1, why invest and not save. Part 2, what you should invest in as a beginner. Part 3, when and how much to invest. Part 4, I'll walk you through a live stock purchase step by step. And Part 5, investing strategies for beginners. All right, let's get into this. Part 1. So investing isn't just for Wall Street pros. It's for anyone who wants their money to work instead of just sitting around and losing value. Let's say you have an extra $1,000. So what's the plan? You could just spend it on something fun, or stash it under your pillow, or just let it sit in your savings account. But here's the problem. Inflation is eating away at your money. That $1,000 won't be worth the same in a few years. Prices are ultimately going to go up, and your money's buying power is going to be less. Think about it. Have you ever noticed your caramel frappuccino that used to be $5 is now almost around $8 or $9? That's pretty much inflation in action. And the smartest move that you can make is to invest that cash so that it grows rather than shrinking. Now, growing your money isn't magic, it's math. And there's 2 key ways that this happens. First, when you buy a stock, you own a piece of a company. Take Nvidia, for example. If Nvidia crushes it, designs and sells more graphics cards, launches a new product, and rakes in more profits, its value is also going to rise. Since you own a piece of Nvidia, your investments are also going to go up too. The second way is through compound interest, which Albert Einstein calls the 8th wonder of the world. This is when your money makes more money, and that money makes even more money. It's kind of like a snowball rolling down a hill, and it gets bigger and bigger over time. Let's say that you invest $1,000 with a 10% return. After around 6 years or so, you're going to hit around $100,000. But here's where it gets crazy. The next $100,000 takes less than 4 years, then less than 3 years, then less than 2 years. And by the time you have $1 million portfolio, your portfolio is going to grow $100,000 and more every year or so. This is why it's so important to get started with investing as early and often as possible. Part 2. All right, now you're on board with this whole investing thing. But the next big question is, many beginners make the mistake of chasing whatever stocks are hot at the moment. And that's a really bad idea. Just because a stock crushed it last year doesn't mean that it's going to do the same next year. Let me prove this to you. Remember a couple years back when there were stocks like BlackBerry and Kodak? Well, at their peak, their shares were worth around $145 and $90 respectively. And then when they crashed, their shares dropped all the way down to $10 and $1 respectively. If you invested based on past success, you would have lost a lot of money. So what's the better move? It's really through index funds. When you're investing in index funds, you're basically investing in a whole basket of stocks rather than just one stock. There's less stress, less risk, and more potential for long-term growth. Even Warren Buffett, one of the best investors in the world, says that most people should be investing in index funds. And if it's good enough for him, it's going to be good enough for me. Investing in an index fund is one of the easiest ways to grow wealth without stressing over every single stock pick. Even John Bogle, the founder of Vanguard, said, "Don't look for the needle in the haystack, just buy the entire haystack." And that's exactly what an index fund does. It gives you exposure to the entire market instead of just trying to pick the winners. So what exactly does an index fund mean? Well, the simplest way to break it down is by looking at the 2 words separately, index and fund. An index is just a list of companies. For example, the S&P 500 is simply a list of the top 500 companies in the United States, and this includes companies like Apple, Microsoft, and Tesla. A fund is just a collection of money pulled from investors, people like you and me, and that money is used to buy assets, in this case, stocks. So when I say invest in an index fund, I'm basically saying we're investing in a little bit of each company in this entire index. Okay, so you get to diversify, but what's the next big advantage of investing in an index fund? Well, you get to lower your risk. Instead of putting all your money into one stock and hoping it takes off, you own a piece of hundreds of companies, reducing the chances of losing everything if one stock crashes. You can think of it as putting your eggs, or your very small eggs, in many different baskets. If one company struggles, it barely affects you because you still have hundreds of other companies carrying the weight. Okay, let me show you a real-world example of what an index plan looks like, so you can see what you would be investing in. So for this example, let's take a look at one of my favorite index funds, or ETF, an exchange-traded fund. This is called VOO, V-O-O, which basically tracks the S&P 500. So when I buy into this ETF, I'm basically investing in all of the biggest companies in the world without having to buy each stock individually. This automatically lets me invest in companies like Microsoft, Nvidia, Tesla, Visa, and Home Depot. So when you invest in this ETF, how do you actually know which companies you're investing in? Well, it's pretty simple. You can actually check the portfolio section of the fund's holding. So if you would take a look at VOO, you can see that Apple makes up a certain percentage, Microsoft makes up a certain percentage, and Nvidia also. If you're someone who wants to invest for the long term, then you can invest in ETFs like FXAIX, VOO or VOO, or SPY. These are all ETFs that pretty much do the same thing. They track the S&P 500, but they're just from different companies. Now, something else I want you to consider before investing in your first ETF is to look at the expense ratio. So what's the expense ratio? These are the fees that cover the cost of managing the fund. They go towards administrative costs and keeping the funds running. So let's say there's a fund that charges a 1% expense ratio. And if you invest $11,000, you'd basically be paying $110 per year in fees, which are automatically deducted from your investment. Generally speaking, you should be looking for index funds or an ETF that have an expense ratio below 0.5%. Here are my recommendations for picking ETFs. First, pick an ETF that tracks the S&P 500. Second, the price of the ETF per share doesn't matter because you can buy partial shares by putting a dollar amount in rather than a share amount when you go to buy. And third, you want to pick an ETF with a low expense ratio. Let's say that you want to start off by investing in the S&P 500, which on average gives around a 7 to 12% annual return. Now, that doesn't mean it goes up every year by 12%. Some years it might go down by 20, other years it could go up by 20. But in the long term, if you were to stretch out the x-axis, the S&P usually gives between 7 and 12% a year. Part 3. All right, so now you understand what to invest in. The next big question is, when do you actually start investing? Every time someone asks me this, I usually take them through a 2-step checklist. And if you can check these off, that means you're ready to start investing. The first question is, do you have high interest debts over 7 to 12%? If you do, you should pay that off before investing a single dollar. Paying that off is like getting a guaranteed return. And usually if someone promises you a guaranteed profit, they're probably scamming you. But in this case, it's actually true. Think about it this way. The stock market averages around a 10% return. But if you're paying 25% interest on a credit card debt, you pay that off first. It's like getting a guaranteed 25% return. It's the easiest win that you'll ever get. Say you owe $10,000 on a credit card with a 25% interest rate, that's $2,500 annually. That money automatically gets deducted from your bank because you have to pay off that interest. And this credit card debt acts like a leak in your finances where you're trying to fill up your gas tank and there's this massive hole in it. You want to fill up that hole before you put in more gas. Instead of throwing $10,000 into the stock market, if you use it to pay off your debt, you're instantly saving $2,500 with zero risk. That's like making $2,500 in the stock market without any risk, and these type of returns are very hard to find. The second question is, do you have a 3 to 6 month emergency fund? An emergency fund is like a safety net just in case life gives you unexpected expenses. If your car breaks down, if you have a flat tire, maybe you lose a job. You want to make sure that you have an emergency fund. And if you don't have an emergency fund, you might end up relying on a credit card or even worse, selling your investments at a bad time, which then compounds your losses. So before you put any money into the stock market, make sure that you can check off these 2 boxes. Your high interest rate debt is gone, and you have an emergency fund. Now let's talk about how much money you should actually invest. A lot of people think they need thousands of dollars to get started, when in reality, you could start by just investing $1. Now, with that said, your returns are going to depend on how much you invest. Smaller investments are going to lead to smaller returns, and bigger investments are going to lead to bigger returns. If you invest $10 and the stock market goes up 10%, you make $1. It's not exactly life-changing. But if you invest $50,000 and got the same 10% gain, that's $5,000, which is a bigger difference. So my rule of thumb, only invest money you don't need for the next several years. So if you're saving for a house and you need that money within 1 to 2 years, the stock market is not the place for it. Because the stock market is going to have volatility, and it's going to go up and down like a roller coaster in the short term, and there's no real way to predict it. So if anyone claims they know exactly where the stock market is going to go in the short term, they're lying to you, because nobody can predict the future. Part 4. All right, let's go step by step on how to buy your first stock. And to make this practical, I'm going to walk you through an actual trade. When it comes to investing, you have 2 main options for brokerage accounts. First, you have your retirement accounts like your 401k and your Roth IRA. These accounts have major tax benefits, but the catch is that you can't pull the money out before 59 and a half without penalties. If you want more flexibility, you can then consider opening a TBA or a tax brokerage account. With all of these different kinds of accounts, you can open them up with companies like Fidelity, Schwab, or Vanguard. Or if you're out of the US, you can even look into interactive brokers. So what's the trade-off between investing in a Roth IRA versus a TBA or a taxable brokerage account? Well, in a nutshell, with a TBA, you can contribute as much money as you want and take out as much money as you want, compared to a Roth IRA where there are going to be some contribution limits. However, with a TBA, just like the name implies, you're going to be taxed, right? Because it's called the taxable brokerage account. However, with a Roth IRA, all of your money is going to be tax and penalty free at age 59 and a half. So basically, a Roth IRA has more tax advantages. Okay, so let's go to either Vanguard, Schwab, or Fidelity, and let's open an account. And you can open up any of these accounts here, like a Roth IRA or a regular brokerage account. Once you click on it, it's going to take you to a form, and you have to fill out some of your important information, like your name, your address, birthday, social security number, and all of this really only takes about 5 minutes. Once you get your account, then you can go to your dashboard and click on transfer. So you can link your bank account and deposit money from your bank into your brokerage account. Next, you can go back to your dashboard and go to the little magnifying glass and search for the stock or the ETF that you want to invest in. So for this example, I'm going to type in FXAIX. This is Fidelity's version of the S&P 500. You can see that if you want to buy 1 share of this ETF, it's going to cost around $200 something. Let's say that you want to buy 1 share. You can type in the number 1. Or if you only have $100, you can choose the dollar amount and enter 100. And then you're going to set this as a market order. Then you're going to go all the way down to the bottom and click on review and then buy. And that's pretty much it. Now, if you want to check what you're actually investing in, you can go to a website like Yahoo Finance and go to the holdings section. You can see that within the ETF, there's companies like Visa, Coca-Cola, Home Depot, Cisco, etc. And that's it. Congratulations. You've made your first stock purchase, and you are now officially an investor. Part 5. Let's look at some investing tips for beginners. When do you sell your stocks, or do you just keep holding on to them? For beginners, my thought process is simple. Think long term. This means that ideally you want to hold on to your investments for 5 years or even longer. Honestly, when you buy a stock or an ETF, you just want to buy it and hold on to it and forget about it. Every month, a portion of my income is automatically put into my investment accounts, and I use that money to buy my favorite ETFs. And even when the stock market goes down or drops, because the natural reaction for many people is to panic and sell before they lose more. And this is what everyone calls panic selling. And panic selling is precisely how most people lose money in the stock market. So let me show you something that proves why selling in a panic is one of the worst mistakes you can make if you're serious about building wealth. Let's look at SPY, which is an S&P 500 ETF, and it tracks the S&P 500. So let's look at this chart of SPY and say we rewind all the way back to the early 2000s. Imagine that you decided to invest in the stock market back when Maybe you bought a share back in October of 2007 for 154. And your plan was to hold on to it and let it grow over several years. But then what happens? Boom, the 2008 financial crisis hits and the entire stock market crashes. At this point, a lot of people started to panic. They sell everything because they're scared. And honestly, I get it. It's terrifying to see your portfolio drop and so much red on your screen. But if you zoom out and use logic instead of fear, history tells us something important, that markets recover. And here's the key. You haven't lost anything unless you actually sell. SPY dropped around $154 to $73. But if you don't sell, you still own that one share. You only lose money if you sell at a loss. If you fast forward to, say, February 2013 and take a look at SPY, it's now at $150 per share. Now you've broken even. But if you keep holding onto your ETF, by 2015, SPY is up to $229. Now, if you fast forward to 2018, you can see that SPY is $300 per share, and you've basically doubled your money. If you keep holding, keep ignoring the news, keep ignoring the noise, and you trust the process over time, you're going to learn that the stock market always wins. And now, if you take a look at SPY is around $500 to $600 per share, which is almost a 4x return. And all you had to do was wait patiently. So here's the takeaway. It doesn't matter what happens day to day. If you invest for the long term, the stock market rewards patience. And I get it. Emotions take over when you're in the moment and logic takes a back seat. But I say take a pause, take a deep breath, because if you look at any long-term S&P 500 chart, you're going to see the same pattern, that the stock market trends up over time. And when the stock market drops, they're going to feel like huge in the moment. But in the long term, most likely you're not even going to remember them. Studies have shown that if you miss just the best 10 days in the stock market, your returns can be cut by over half. That means that if you put in $100,000 in the stock market and left it alone over time, it could grow to, say, $200,000. But if you panic and jump in and out, you might only end up with $144,000. Markets don't rise gradually, they surge when you least expect it. And if you miss those surges, your returns are going to get ruined. This is why it's always better to have time in the markets rather than timing the markets.